Now, to look at the significance of that parade in more detail, we have with us Professor Kim Hyun-wook from the Korea National Diplomatic Academy. Thank you for coming on the show again, Professor.
Thank you.
Now, let's start. There were various aspects of that parade that we'll look at, but let's start with the fact that there were no ICBMs on display in the parade on Sunday. It perhaps wasn't a complete surprise, but what do you make of it, Professor?
Everybody, I think most of people, experts, would have expected that there would be no ICBM on the parade. But nevertheless, that's a very big change from the North Korean position. This February this year, when there was a ceremony in North Korea celebrating the establishment of its military, 70th establishment of its military, there were 2 ICBMs shown in the parade, Hwasong 14 and 15. Even though at the time, right after the, Kim Jong-un's New Year's speech, and Kim Jong-un initiated kind of detente move with South Korea. And afterwards, I think 7-8 months have passed, and now it seems like a North Korean-U.S. relationship is getting better and better with a higher degree of trust with each other. Because at the time, it was initial phase, but now, it is clearly, thinking that this kind of move, having ICBM on a parade would, hamper the possible negotiation frame with the United States. So something, I think most of the experts might have expected.
Do you think Kim was keeping one eye on the U.S. reaction to this?
I think so. North Korea definitely does not want to break the frame, negotiation frame with the United States. I'm not sure if it really wants to, fasten the denuclearization, fasten the, security. Regime security guarantee by the United States. I'm not sure about that. Maybe some other factors is making North Korea's decision kind of slow, I think. Domestic factors of the United States, for example, President Trump's, it's not sure whether he would, overcome some domestic scandal issues and win at the midterm elections. It's kind of not sure whether he will be re-elected. All these kind of things I think is making Kim Jong-un not sure whether he really has to, begin, denuclearizing issues, with the U.S. government, which has no clear future of its regime and government. So I think those kind of things would make Kim Jong-un not fasten its negotiation with the United States. But the clear thing is that North Korea wants to resume and continue the negotiation frame with the United States.
There was also no speech from Kim Jong-un. These parades normally is an opportunity for him to express his thoughts to the people. Was the fact that there was no speech a surprise to you?
I think he would feel kind of burdened, by making himself a speech himself. Kim Yong-nam instead made a speech focusing on the economic issues, economic development, all that kind of things, instead of focusing on the nuclear issues and the military issues. But nevertheless, at the Rodong newspaper, there were termed the war deterrence capability of North Korea. I'm not sure why that has come out on the newspaper. Maybe it's a message to the United States and to the domestic conservatives in North Korea altogether. There might be some, conservatives, who is not, 100% supporting the Kim Jong-un's policies, new policies. Maybe Kim Jong-un has to give some signal to them. Oh, okay, we want economic development. That doesn't mean that we are completely, giving up our deterrence capability vis-a-vis the United States. And also it's the message to the United States, kind of softened, term, rather than using the term nuclear, did not use the term nuclear, but only used a term deterrence capabilities, deterring the warfare, kind of signaling that, okay, I have softened this, term, signaling that, okay, we are kind of focusing on the economic development more rather than nuclear issues.
The parade was also broadcast on state media a day late, which is unusual for the regime. Why would Pyongyang do this?
maybe direct broadcast, live broadcast. Maybe you know better than me. You have been working in this field for a long time. Live broadcasting gives a very vivid and clear and direct message to the audience. One day after the event, people easily forget about it. I mean, and even when it's broadcasted a day later, the impact it has is much more lower than the live broadcasting. So maybe by doing this, Kim Jong-un is trying to soften some kinds of stimulus that would give to the United States, not doing the live broadcasting, but a day later.
Now, it seems the fact that this mid-parade was toned down was a message to the U.S., sending a message to the U.S., and it seems President Trump has very much taken it on board. He responded on Twitter, as usual, saying, referencing the fact that North Korea had not showcased its ICBMs, and he said, quote, "This is a big and very positive statement from North Korea. Thank you, Chairman Kim. We will both prove everyone wrong." Now, Pyongyang's decision to show off its hardware definitely seems to have de-escalated the tensions. Do you think, I mean, how important do you think this decision by Kim Jong-un is in putting the negotiations back on track, seeing as they've been stalled in recent weeks?
President Trump definitely, for now, wants to, continue this frame of negotiation with North Korea. But the elites and policymakers within the Trump government, for example, Pompeo, Bolton, and others, are very hardline on North Korea issues. So they still believe that the North Korea has no genuine intention to give up its nuclear weapons, just dragging some time and buying some time for further future negotiations in better conditions. I think the issue. So the current Kim Jong-un's decision at this time is making Trump very happy, because this is giving another momentum for him to continue the framework, negotiation framework with Kim Jong-un. But I think at the same time, I think this is very well modified and adjusted strategy vis-a-vis the Trump government. Look at this. The Kim Jong-un is kind of giving some bad time to Trump, kind of disappoint Trump at some point. But right after, he's kind of giving a good incentive to Trump so that the negotiation will go back into a normal, condition. So by giving a negative sign, this is making his policymakers get angry. And by giving a good incentives, this is making President Trump very happy. So as this strategy of North Korea is repeated, President Trump himself and his policymakers, the gap between them on their North Korea policy is getting wider and wider. So I think this is a very delicate strategy of North Korea to decouple President Trump and his policymakers.
Critics of President Trump's would argue that despite this nice gesture by North Korea, ultimately has very little substantial meaning, because there is still no progress on denuclearization, no time known, no list of weapons, no progress towards a possible agreement on to declare the end of the Korean War. It's like basically saying, we'll know they have nuclear weapons, we're just not going to show it. So how seriously actually should we take this gesture by Kim Jong-un? Should we look at the positives, or at the end of the day, is it still, at the moment, still stall negotiations and a lot of negatives?
Well, that's very a significant point. I think this kinds of North Korea gesture definitely have some outcome that North Korea wants to continue the frame between the United States and North Korea, denuclearizing issues and the peace in the Korean Peninsula. But I'm not sure if this would make some big deal between the U.S. and North Korea possible. National Security Advisor Jung Eun, after his visit to Pyongyang, came down to South Korea and reported, briefed about the outcome of his visit. And in his briefing, there was no change of North Korea at all. North Korea's position was still, expecting the U.S. to do something, for example, declaration of the end of Korean War. And it's now U.S. turn to do something, and still the same, simultaneous progress That's something that North Korea is still expecting from the United States. So there's no change from the North Korean attitude towards the United States, even after Jong-un has visited Pyongyang. So I'm not sure what will be the U.S. position yet. Maybe some kinds of policies of the United States will be delivered when Special Representative Biegun visits Seoul tomorrow. But I think one big homework that we have is at the summit meeting between North and South Korea. I think the President Moon has to definitely persuade Kim Jong-un to change his positions towards the United States and do some significant initial measures to denuclearize itself.
One last point on the parade. As we knew last week, President Xi Jinping did not attend the festivities over the weekend. He instead sent his number 3, Li Jianshu, who also carried with him a letter from the Chinese leader. What do you make of the current situation between, current relationship between Beijing and Pyongyang, looking at this development?
Whenever the U.S. intervenes actively, China always, dawdled the North Korea, intervene with North Korea, bolstered its relationship with North Korea, and that's something happening. But because of Trump's, hardline policy on China, Xi Jinping himself is not visiting Pyongyang. But if I were Xi Jinping, I would visit Pyongyang, because even though Xi Jinping is not visiting Pyongyang, I don't think Trump's trade war with China would be softened. I don't think the trade war on China, or I don't think the bashing on China will be softer than before. I think if Trump will continue the same bashing China policy, he will bash China continuously, the same degree. But the bad thing is that as Xi Jinping has not visited Pyongyang, I think Kim Jong-un would have been disappointed by Xi Jinping. Oh, because of the U.S. pressure on China, Xi Jinping is not coming to Pyongyang. So the relationship, of course, both leaders are trying to bolster the relationship, but I don't think Xi Jinping's not going to Pyongyang. I don't think it's good for the interests of China.
Well, I mean, if we just saw in the pictures on our screens there, we saw Kim Jong-un holding his right-hand man, Li Jianshu's hand, and raising it up.
Sure.
And Kim Jong-un seemed very happy with him, the fact that he was there. Is that just show, do you think? Or do you think there is something, underlying concerns there between the relationship?
Yeah, definitely Xi Jinping did the most he could do to Kim Jong-un, sending the high-level government official, which is ranked number 3 in China, delivered his letter, private letter to Kim Jong-un. He did many things, but definitely he has not visited Pyongyang. And I think Kim Jong-un, after his 3-time visit to China, I think would have expected Xi Jinping to come to Pyongyang himself. Maybe he thinks that he's happy because that Li Jianshu is in Pyongyang, but his visit is definitely something lower than Xi Jinping's visit himself.
Interesting. Well, that's all we have time for. Thank you for coming in, and we look forward to having you on the show next time as well.
Thank you very much.